There's no doubting that Minecraft is one of the most celebrated games of all time, but that hasn't made it immune to some really bad updates. Let's go ahead and let's check out what some of the worst of those are. So the intro said it all. We're going to be checking out some of the worst updates that Minecraft has ever seen before. Specifically, we're going to be checking out 5 of them, and I'm going to be naming them in sequential order in which that they came out. So let's go ahead and let's start with number 1, which is Beta 1.8. I consider Beta 1.8 to be one of the most broken updates that ever came out in Minecraft. All the way up through Beta 1.7, each update kind of had their purpose, and they did a good job at not completely destroying the game, or at the very least not completely changing so many things that it was overwhelming. The hunger system until 1.11 was completely broken and took away the fun of a new world. Before, if you didn't take any damage, you didn't have to eat. And in my opinion, that should still be a thing, where if you don't take any damage, then your hunger won't go down. That would be a really good improvement, actually. Thankfully though, 1.11 has done a really good job at fixing this problem. I really wanted this top 5 to only focus on one specific thing that was wrong with any given update, but man, Beta 1.8 had 2 critical flaws, and the second one is the loss of unique looking worlds. All of the terrain really felt kind of boring after the major biome update that happened in Beta 1.8, and I think the goal was to make the worlds look a little bit more realistic, but I mean, Minecraft was never famous for having realistic worlds, and this was an awful update that persisted all the way until release 1.7, which came a long time after that. And another issue with terrain is, seriously, infinite oceans? Really? I mean, I know they weren't literally infinite, but sometimes they went on for literally hundreds of thousands of blocks. Like, what is that? I mean, I get that our real world has some pretty big oceans, but the amount of land to ocean was seriously disproportional. You would walk an island that is like 20,000 blocks from side to side, and then you would most likely encounter an infinite ocean. There were very few seeds, or at least a very few percentage of seeds, that actually had a very good sizable amount of land that lacked infinite oceans. So Beta 1.8, one of the worst updates that ever came out, and we're only just getting started. So number 2 on the list is Release 1.0. There were not a huge amount of changes between Beta 1.8 and Release 1.0, as Beta 1.8 had a lot of the intended features for Minecraft's launch. However, Release 1.0 added one big thing, and that was the Ender Dragon fight. And in my opinion, the Ender Dragon fight was critically incomplete until a very recent update that happened, where the Ender Dragon fight was completely overhauled. So in the beginning, the Ender Dragon had no sounds at all, there was no music for the fight, and in my opinion, the fight itself was an absolute joke. Like, let me explain how the fight worked for the longest time. Actually, let me explain how it was probably coded. So basically, the Ender Dragon would pick a random spot in the sky and roughly fly within that area, although most of the time it would be well out of your range. Every 5 to 10% of the time when it looked for a spot, it would instead charge the player. So it might take forever for the Ender Dragon to actually charge you. And then it would pick a random number somewhere between 1 and 1 billion, and that many towers would spawn within the end itself. If the Ender Dragon is close to an active Ender Crystal, it would get health. So there's very basic commands that can do that in Minecraft. If the Ender Crystal takes any damage at all, it explodes like already coded TNT, and when the Ender Dragon reached 0 health, it was dead. And in my opinion, this was a lot of lazy coding that was done to rush Minecraft's release in time for Minecon 2011. Like, I think they wanted to do a lot more with this fight, and they just dropped the ball, and they refused to say, hey, this isn't really complete, let's go ahead and let's do the real good Ender Dragon update for Minecraft 1.1. They let it sit until like Minecraft 1.9, which came out over 2 years after Minecraft's original release at Minecon in 2011. It is pathetic that it took that long, though thankfully Minecraft 1.9 mostly fixed the Ender Dragon fight, and now it's at least mostly pretty interesting. Next up on the list is Release 1.3. Now, Release 1.3 really did have some of the better updates that Minecraft has ever seen, such as trading, adventure mode, desert and village temples, and a ton of different items to name the least. But I have two pretty minor annoyances with this update. So the first issue is that this was the update that transitioned Minecraft away from having a separate single player and multiplayer over to having the blended multiplayer system, where whenever you would host a single player server or play a single player server, it would basically be hosting a local hosted multiplayer server instance that only you could join unless you opened it up to LAN. So that was a cool feature of it, is that you could play with friends on the same network. However, this meant that mobs were really laggy. I mean, look at them. They're really laggy. Whenever you hit them, they stutter around a lot. Squids look like total derps. And in all versions prior to Minecraft 1.3, all of the mobs had nice fluid movements, and whenever you would hit them, there was no problems at all. But in 1.3 and after, the movements just got really janky. Now, thankfully, since then, it has gotten a bit better, but in 1.3, man, this was a pretty critical problem. And the other problem that I have with 1.3 was basically just a lot of the lighting issues that happened. Because multiplayer always kind of had issues with lighting, they were brought to single player with this update because Minecraft lighting really hadn't been fixed yet. And again, in modern versions of Minecraft, thankfully, this is mostly fixed. I really had to come to this update, but next up on the list is Release 1.9, the combat update. Now, this is arguably one of the worst updates to ever come to Minecraft, and rightfully so for thinking so. This is the update that changed combat mechanics forever by adding a cooldown timer to literally every single tool, but the big one that people really care about is the cooldown timer applied to all the weapons. This was an update that really no one was asking for, and since we have it, no one is really enjoying all that much. I myself am a little unbiased, but for the most part, if the old combat system came back, I would definitely be happier than I am right now. And that's something that really bothers me. We have a modern version of Minecraft that has all of these game rules that you can apply. So many different things, such as whether or not mob collision is a thing or not. However, there isn't a game rule for whether or not all weapons have a cooldown. Like, are you serious? I would even understand if that game rule was set to on by default. Like, maybe it should be a thing that you set when you create the world. Like, do you want weapon cooldown? And that can either be on or off by default. And this would also allow for a really easy way for servers to have this option disabled. Like, seriously, the majority of current Minecraft servers that even support 1.9 and 1.10 are also cross-compatible with Minecraft 1.8 for the very specific reason that they are trying to avoid requiring the new combat mechanics on their server because nobody really likes the 1.9 combat mechanics. Seriously, Mojang, why is this not a game rule? Like, really, you have this nice modular system of game rules that people can apply, and yet you don't make this new combat mechanic optional? Really? Like, seriously, how complicated does this sound? Slash game rule, tool cooldown, false or true. Not that hard, but I'm done ranting about 1.9. Let's move on to the last item on the list. And last up on the list is Minecraft 1.10. Now again, Minecraft 1.10 was not an explicitly bad update, and as far as the other items on this list is concerned, this is a pretty mild thing that I'm mentioning. But Minecraft 1.10 included the auto jump feature. Now this feature by itself is not really that bad of an addition. However, the fact that it is forced on is something that I really have a problem with. Up until Minecraft 1.10 in the PC version, there was no auto jump, but in 1.10 it's forced on by default, and if I ever switch versions between 1.10 and a prior version, then that option in my options file gets reset, so no matter what I set it to, it always kind of switches back to auto jump. And I can think of at least 2 instances where I have died because auto jump was a thing, and I can't think of any time where I really ever wanted to have it on. Now, I can understand auto jump being a thing on like mobile versions of the game. I'm not sure if it's default or a thing on console versions, but at least on mobile, I get it. There are not a lot of buttons that you can use, and it would be really annoying to have to tap the screen over and over and over again to jump. But on a keyboard on a PC, for example, you have a lot of buttons on your keyboard. Pressing the spacebar is like a natural thing in games, so it makes sense for it to be a thing you have to do. So, I don't know, maybe this one's just me, but I feel like having it on by default is just a really weird decision. And that about wraps up this top 5. Let me know in the comment section down below how you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys have any ideas for top 5s or top 10s or top 6s or whatever you want me to do in the future, feel free to discuss them and let me know in the comment section down below. And if you've made it this far into the video, leaving a like on the video if you enjoyed it would be highly appreciated. It really does help out the channel. But anyways, guys, I hope you all have enjoyed this video. My name is AntVenom, and I bid you all farewell. Thanks so much for watching.